Bunny Ratner came to me before last year's ceremony, as the mayor said, to get more young people involved in this event. It's hard to imagine for so many of us here, but my students that are juniors were 1 on September 11th, 2001, and the sophomores weren't even born yet. So with that in mind, teaching it in history class becomes more and more important. So last year in my United States History 2 class, we watched a documentary on September 11th. We read primary source documents and secondary source accounts of the days. We talked about it in class. We had an in-depth lesson, multiple lessons on that day, the events leading up to it, and then following it. And then the students reflected in writing on what September 11th meant to them, how they can reflect on it, what do they draw from that day so many years ago. And after reading them all, my student Zoe Peckel wrote really an outstanding thing about her thoughts about that day. So ladies and gentlemen, Zoe Peckel.
In one of his many fireside chats, President Franklin Roosevelt expressed his faith in the resiliency of the American people. When asked if he thought they would be able to pull themselves out of the Great Depression, he responded simply, "They will if they want to." This idea that the American will to survive is stronger than tragedy has proven true numerous times in American history, from Pearl Harbor in 1941 to September 11th, 2001. This is the reason that the 9/11 tragedy continues to affect all Americans, even those who did not live through it or who were much too young to remember it. Almost everyone who lived through 9/11 can tell you exactly where they were, what they were doing, and how they felt when they heard of the attacks. My generation is one of the first that was alive on September 11th, but was not old enough to remember the day itself. Although many people cannot forget it, it's now history to those of us who were either not alive or not yet old enough to understand the gravity of the situation. Instead, we learn about September 11th from textbooks, documentaries, family members, and from the many ceremonies that commemorate the day. These include the pictures we've grown up seeing, the people we've lost, and the stories we've heard from our parents, relatives, friends, and teachers. When I drive past Eagle Rock, and for the second before I go down the hill that I can see the New York City skyline, it is significant that I am not only seeing a different skyline than I would have 16 years ago, but that I am also living in a different America. In America today, we feel the effects of September 11th constantly, from our airport security to our politics to the way every citizen knows the significance of the date. All of these things are somewhat abstract for those of us who did not witness the attacks. Still, most of us have a clear picture of it in our minds due to first-hand recollections from our parents and friends, and we feel the loss that is so personal to many of you here tonight. What we also have is a strong sense of the United States after 9/11. Of the spirit of restoration and strong-willed resilience that has come to define the Americans who experienced it. America is not a perfect country. The aftermath of the 9/11 attacks showcases this every time fear leads to wrongful accusation or persecution of innocent groups. But the aftermath also reveals some of the most important characteristics of the United States. In my limited experience, studying American history can make one angry, confused, and proud, sometimes all at once. Learning of the many years of oppression faced by various groups, much of which has not ended, is incredibly frustrating. However, there are also many instances that demonstrate the true character of America, moments that showcase the resiliency of this country and the strength of its people. 9/11 is one of these moments. While incredibly tragic, it also led to unparalleled cooperation and inspiring support from Americans across the country, from the first responders to the communities that still come together so many years later to stand with neighbors as a show of unity and mutual support. On September 11th, 2001, I was not aware of the attack itself, but what I am aware of is the legacy of American fortitude it has left behind. For the same reasons that it is necessary we remember past tragedies, it is important that we commemorate 9/11, so that succeeding generations are aware of the tragic events that occurred, as well as the way their country has reacted to that day ever since. While it can be painful to memorialize events like this, it is for the recognition of all those who lost their lives, as well as for the appreciation of those who sacrificed so much to help on that day that we continue to do so. The attacks on September 11th rocked America and the world. More important, however, is our response to them. We mourn for those we lost that day, and we stand together as a community on evenings like this. We refuse to submit to terrorism and fear and continue to demonstrate strength and cooperation in times of crisis. These characteristics define America. It is with this strength that Americans fulfill FDR's prediction that if they have the desire to overcome tragedy, they will, and they have. Thank you.